Hey guys, Pete here. This will be my Better Call Saul Season 5, Episode 9 recap and review. Jimmy has a reality check for Kim, Kim has a reality check for Jimmy, and Lalo is the reality check at the front door of their apartment. Bad Choice Road, unsurprisingly, has people making choices, with most of them trending in the direction of looking bad. Quick spoiler warning, if you haven't watched the 9th episode in Season 5 of Better Call Saul, this video will definitely spoil it for you. Go watch, get caught up first, and then come back and watch this recap. Episode 509, Bad Choice Road, was longer than usual, so there's a lot to unpack, and it defied the typical shocking event to set up the ending of the season formula that works so well in TV dramas. Jimmy's journey through the desert with Mike is not something he can quickly put behind him, and so the penultimate episode takes us through the aftermath while all the moving parts of the story continued to grind away around him. Instead of one big event, it was many events, and it was a joy to watch. The opening teaser is a callback to Season 4's 7th episode, Something Stupid. In that episode, we observed Jimmy and Kim in split screen, moving in different directions in their lives. The song was the same, but the direction was different. Jimmy was making his way through the PPD process, laying the groundwork for his future name change as the burner phone business picked up. Kim was going back to work at the office at Schweikert & Coakley and putting in time on her pro bono cases. It's the biggest time jump we've had in the series, and we watched as they were living together but drifting apart. In the teaser for 509, they're far apart geographically, but desperately want to be together. Jimmy is still in the desert, drinking his own urine to keep him going, and Kim is at home smoking heavily, trying to keep hope alive. They're a long way from where they were in Something Stupid. Now, a married couple where both partners realize just how important the other is to them in light of the situation, but also now two players in the game. The second part will take some time to accept, but the decisions they've made have already ensured their place on the roster in a trip down Bad Choice Road. To everyone's relief, Jimmy finally points his phone to the sky and gets service. Civilization is once again at their fingertips, which means Jimmy can upgrade his beverage to something other than his bodily fluids. They will, in fact, make it out of the desert alive, but first Jimmy has to call Kim. He dials as he slumps down on his knees, and holy hell, these kids can act. Kim takes a breath before putting the phone up to her ear to steady herself, but after a short pause, when she hears Jimmy's voice, she breaks and allows herself to cry. After this heartfelt moment, the desert duo make it to a gas station. They get cleaned up, get some new clothes, and start to rehydrate while they wait for Tyrus and Victor to come pick them up. We learn that no one had discovered the scene of the shootout and that Gus is sending a crew there to clean everything up. Jimmy goes straight to pay the bail, and while this sets off red flags with the prosecutors, he is able to get his client released. Lalo grills Jimmy as expected, but he sticks to the script that Mike went over with him. His car broke down about 6 miles from the money drop, and with no cell service, he had to walk out. Lalo tries to poke holes, asking why he didn't hitchhike his way out, but Jimmy's answer that he was afraid to do so with so much cash seems to satisfy him for now. Just as they're about to part ways and Jimmy can finally head home, Lalo rocks his world by saying, "Make sure you buy something nice for the wife. Man, she's a looker, huh?" In the most Lalo way possible, he lets him know that Kim came to see him, and Jimmy knows that that means that she's no longer safe. Back at home, Kim does her best to nurture her husband back to health, as he's visibly beat down from this experience. It crushed me a little bit watching her tend to him while he makes the decision to lie to her about what happened. While this is a betrayal of their honesty policy, it felt more like watching a person trying to buy just a little more time to think their way through an impossible mess of inevitabilities. He knows Kim has met Lalo, but he still wants to find a way that it doesn't mean that she's in the game. He lays down the law and says he can't have her involved with Lalo, that he's worried about her, and that the only thing that kept him going out there was knowing that she was there waiting at home. She agrees to stay away from Lalo and asks him if all of what he went through was worth it. He responds by telling her to go look inside the bag. There she finds the $10,000 stacks of money that he earned for his trouble, but she also sees the second best lawyer mug with a bullet hole in it. This is proof that Jimmy isn't telling her the whole story, but she doesn't bring it up in that moment. I assume she knows that he's going to need some time to recover from this trauma and probably hopes hopes that he'll eventually come clean when he's ready. As viewers, we have no idea how they'll come out of the other side of this, but we can see that their love and care for each other is real. The shot of Kim's eye through the bullet hole in the mug is a nice touch as she starts to see just how dangerous everything is around Jimmy at this moment. Kim plans to stay home and support Jimmy in his recovery, but it turns out he's in no shape to sit still. We learn that he's also in no shape to tell the truth about what happened when Kim gives him the perfect opportunity. Instead, he pretends to get honest, telling her that he had to drink his own pee like that was the worst thing that happened while he was gone. This was the saddest part of the episode for me. It just lays everything that's tragic about their relationship bare. Kim looks inward to find the right way to give Jimmy the opportunity to unburden himself. She's thoughtful and she does it from a place of care. He isn't able to do it, and that's completely understandable on some level. But to watch him pull some Saul-like maneuver out at this moment, it's just really difficult to watch. After that, we learn he's also in no shape to be in court. We don't witness what happens in the courtroom, but ADA Bill's description of Jimmy snatching defeat from the jaws of victory is probably all we need to know. From there, we make our way into Mike's car, where he delivers one of his classic speeches where he distills things down in a way that's level-headed and clear, but in no real way comforting in the moment of delivery. His point is there will come a day when he will realize a day has gone by where he hasn't thought about being out in the desert and what happened. When he realizes he's capable of that, he'll know he's capable of continuing to forget. In other words, this will take time. And he's speaking from experience, and he's not wrong about that. The other point he makes is that people don't randomly end up wandering through the desert with $7 million cash after surviving a shootout. Choices Mike and Jimmy made put them there. And he makes a fair point that in the case with the bandits, it was us or them. They were in the game. Jimmy's having a hard time processing. He brings up Fred from Travel Wire and voices his concerns for doing all this that they're doing just to get Lalo out of trouble. Mike agrees with him that there are problems with the situation with Fred and hints that getting Lalo out is only part of a bigger picture. He stops short of telling Jimmy what the plan is, but perhaps this makes things a little easier to swallow. Either way, Mike's sage advice is the kind of thing that takes some time to digest, and we'll see later that Jimmy is still trying to work his way through it. Kim tries to throw herself into the office and throw herself back into her work, but it becomes clear that almost losing Jimmy has put things into perspective for her. As she tries to dictate a letter, a framed thank you note and photo of one of her pro bono cases catches her eye. Before we can even figure out what's happening, she quits the firm and makes her way out the front door after grabbing the tequila bottle top that her and Jimmy scammed Ken Wins into buying for them. On some level, Kim has been dissatisfied with her job, which is boring and unfulfilling. She's made an attempt to balance that out by doing the pro bono cases, and it's clear here that she just can't continue doing it. At the same time, she's giving up a lot of security that this job provides, a career that she built through her own hard work, and this is something that we'll come back to. Mike seems to be functioning at a much higher level than Saul as we watch him report into Gus. From the tattoo on the bandits, we learn that they were Colombians. This convinces Gus that they were hired by Juan Bolsa, but he doesn't really explain the motives other than saying he thought he was protecting their business. Mike is on his way out, but stops to tell Gus there's one more thing. For a second, I worried that he was going to bring up Jimmy and Kim, but instead he tried to get Gus to let Nacho go. He points out that they won't need him anymore, that he's basically served his purpose, but Gus isn't moved. He compares Nacho to a dog that has bitten every owner it's had and tells Mike that requires a firm hand or for the dog to be put down. Mike doesn't like Gus's reasoning, and he definitely doesn't like that he threatens Nacho's father to control him by fear, but he sees he isn't going to win the argument with his boss. On his way out of town, Lalo goes to visit Hector at Casa Tranquila. The situation the Salamancas find themselves in is not ideal, but Lalo tries to spin it in the best way he can. He will have the ear of Don Eladio when he goes south, and he's confident that he can turn him against Gus. We learn that Tuco is supposed to get out of jail in 11 months, so Nacho won't have to run their operations for very long. He says he knows Tuco can be difficult when he's on the stuff, but he'll make sure that he stays clean once he gets out. He tells Hector that family is everything, and it sort of brings the feels because you can see that Lalo feels bad about leaving his uncle alone. As he walks out the door, we get this sad shot of Hector with this party hat on, and we wonder if he's thinking that this is the last time he's going to see Lalo alive. Nacho drives Lalo out to the well where Jimmy met the cousins. He tells them that he can leave, but at the very last second, he knocks on the window and gets back in the car. He didn't see Jimmy's car on the way in, and he can't leave before he investigates. They backtrack and they find the Esteem in the ditch where Mike and Jimmy left it, and after he jumps down to take a closer look, he notices the bullet hole in the door. This confirms there's more to the story than what Saul told him, and he tells Nacho to take him back to Albuquerque. Kim returns home and delivers the news that she quit Schweikert and Coakley. Jimmy doesn't take it well, and he tells her that he thinks she's making a bad choice. He tries to tailor Mike's monologue about choices to the situation, but does a terrible job of it. Kim pleads her case effectively and makes the point that it's her decision. And besides, Jimmy isn't really in a position to question anyone about their choices. Before they can work things out, Jimmy gets an urgent phone call from Mike just as someone's knocking on their front door. Mike tells him to keep the phone on but hide it so he can hear what's happening inside the apartment. We learn that it's Lalo at the door and he invites himself in. He manages to be completely menacing and still slightly charming at the same time. He wants to hear about what happened in the desert, and when Jimmy repeats his story, Lalo wants to hear it again. This apartment scene is long and tense, but somehow it manages to fly right by. Lalo is obviously trying to catch Jimmy in a lie, and he seems content to wait as long as necessary. We watch as Jimmy's nervousness is just ratcheting up with each retelling. It's getting worse, and he begs for Lalo to let Kim leave. Mike enters the scene, looking at Lalo through the scope of his sniper rifle. He has a clear shot, but it's not clear to us whether he's there to take that, or if he's just there to find out if Jimmy's gonna break and give Lalo information. Sensing that this is what is probably going to happen, Kim steps up and lays into Lalo. Even though she's probably terrified of Lalo, she acts tough and pokes holes in each concern he brings up. She effectively turns things around, saying that if Saul Goodman is the only person you can trust with your money, you've got real problems. There's no decisive victory here. It's just enough to push Lalo back on his heels and get him to leave the apartment. The only thing that's actually decided here is that if Kim wasn't in the game before, she definitely is now. And that's where we leave things. Lalo isn't done, but he goes to the car and tells Nacho they're headed to Mexico. Mike can leave, reporting back that Saul stuck to the story. Jimmy is all sorts of messed up, but for now he's safe, and so is Kim, but they are firmly in the game with one episode to go. So it was a really good setup for the finale. I liked the way they took the time to do what they needed to do with Jimmy, going through what he's going through, and how all of that came down through Kim. It's a tense place that we find ourselves in. Kim's situation feels more desperate and dangerous than it ever has, and we're seeing a vision of Jimmy where he may be more broken than he's ever been before. It was a well-crafted episode, and the acting between Jimmy and Kim just never ceases to amaze me. Take a moment and think about the range of different versions of Jimmy we've seen Bob Odenkirk do since the beginning of 507. The wedding, his first appearance in court with Lalo, his blow up with Howard, his trip through the desert, and now this. I know I don't have to bring this up, but still feel compelled because they're really hitting it out of the park this season. I was curious to what the movie they were watching was whenever they sat down before Jimmy got up and went back to the courthouse. So I went searching online, and according to Alan Sepinwall, writing on Rolling Stone, it's from the classic movie His Girl Friday, which is about a woman who keeps returning to a relationship she knows is deeply unhealthy for her, with a man whose charm and wild professional lifestyle she ultimately can't resist. So that discovery was certainly worth the 5 minutes I had to spend online searching. Kim isn't the only character whose ending is in question. It was pretty deflating to see Mike go to bat for Nacho and get nowhere with Gus. I guess from where he's sitting, he has a point, but it doesn't make it any more palatable. It looks like Nacho will be traveling to Mexico by Lalo's side, and you gotta wonder if both of them will make it back. For sure, Gus will be at an advantage since he'll have his man right next to his opponent. At this point, it's hard to speculate what's going to happen in this last episode and exactly where we'll be when the final season gets started. One thing I was thinking when I was watching Kim talk to Lalo, there's always been talk about episodes during the Gene timeline and episodes that cross over with the Breaking Bad timeline. Even though I know we won't get these, I want to see episodes that happen in the timeline before Kim gets to HHM. There could definitely be some interesting stuff in her backstory before she made her way to Albuquerque. She stepped in to go toe-to-toe with Lalo, and that might be something she learned before she went to law school. It's a little frightening that the teaser was a mirror of something stupid. That showed them living separate lives before coming back together at the end of that season. If this shows them wanting to come together, does that mean that it's before they go off to live separate lives? I mean, we know this is probably coming, but with each episode, it somehow gets harder to accept. One last thing, Kim quitting her job wasn't completely out of nowhere, but it does have a big impact on the future of how the show is structured. Kim has existed on the legal side, with the cartel world, with Mike and Gus being the other side. With Schweikert and Coakley in the rearview mirror, everything in the story, including all the characters, exist on just one side. There's only one side. In the coming weeks, let's discuss how that'll change as we approach the end of the series, going through season 6. So I still have a lot on my mind, but I'm going to end it there. Let's talk in the comments about where we think things are going. Let me know what you thought about this episode. What do you think it means about the finale? Check out the video I made the other day about Kim's fate. It talks about the possible outcomes based on what we know from Breaking Bad and other things we've learned along the way. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you soon.